Keep breathing with your host, Richard Curtin of Rational Radio.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Curtin. You're listening to Just Keep Breathing on Rational Radio, Rational Broadcasting, on Ustream, keyword Rational Radio. Hello.
Hello.
My in-studio guest today, what are we going to call you? We're going to call you the Renaissance woman. The Renaissance woman, Amanda Robinson. Today, our focus, well, I'd like our focus to be Black History Month.
Nice. I love Black History Month. It's my favorite month of the year.
Is it? Why?
Well, for one, you get a chance to go back and touch history. I'm a history buff. I love history. So, unfortunately, like most people, I don't really go back and research Black history until Black History Month. So
really, you only do it in February?
I only do it in February. That's sad, I know, but it's true.
I've been listening to on NPR, Maya Angelou has I love her, but I think we all love listening to her, but she has like little intimate portraits every Monday. She's done Jennifer Hudson and Oprah. I think there were only 4, and it's really disappointing that there are only 4. And it only happens in February.
Yes, it only happens in February.
And so why February? I know we've got Martin Luther King Day, and it's President's Day, but why February?
I want to say it's probably attached to all of those dates, and it was probably the only day in the month in the calendar that they had free. the only month in the year in the calendar that they could stick it in there.
Well, I mean, I don't know what January would be. I mean, January doesn't have like Irish American month.
No.
And it doesn't have, March is St. Patrick's Day, so that I guess that would be Irish American Day.
There you go.
But I can't associate another month with, celebrating. We'll call it minority history. June is Gay Pride Month.
Yes.
And
so you have Cinco de Mayo.
But that's not like Mexican American month.
No.
I don't know of another culture or minority that gets a whole month dedicated. So why do we just celebrate in February?
I don't know why we just celebrate in February. I feel like it's something that we definitely should do more of. Black history and the pioneers that have come before us have really laid a foundation for us. And I definitely think we should celebrate them a whole lot more. We wouldn't have refrigeration, we wouldn't have stoplights. So it's so many different things that Black pioneers have contributed to us that we should celebrate them a whole lot more than just 1 month out of the year.
Who are some of the people that you've been studying this month?
I like the Black entrepreneurs because I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I try to get into the ones that, like Nina Simone. A lot of people don't know that Nina Simone was also a singer, but she was also a journalist. So people don't know that about her. There is also, there's a football player, David Robertson. A lot of people don't know about him. He played in the NFL, but he's also an attorney. He was also a civil rights activist. So, I like entrepreneurs that did multiple things because I do multiple things. So I try to relate to, someone in history that was kind of on the same path as me now.
I was just listening to an interview with, her name is escaping me. She had a real popular hit in the 80s, and she's from the Dominican Republic, I think, or Antigua, and she had a real popular 80s hit, and she's a writer, and she's written for the New Yorker, and it was a very interesting. I shouldn't have brought it up. I can't come up with her name. When I was thinking about this show today, I went back into my history, and I can't remember when Black History Month started.
That's a good one.
I know that, and being from Alabama, you would think that there would have been more black history taught to me in Alabama.
Not at all.
And what I can tell you is that I learned about Harriet Tubman, and I learned about the Underground Railroad, and I learned a little bit about slavery, but the emphasis would have been on Lincoln. And so, has any of that changed?
Not much in the South, unfortunately. School doesn't really focus on Black history as much as they focus on where we've come as a nation. So the constitutional things is what they predominantly talk more about in school. They don't really focus on slavery and how it currently affects us. They don't really focus on just current modern. It's not modernized, so everything is still stuck back in time. So it definitely needs a new face for sure. The school system, the educational system, when it comes to Black history, is definitely not enough, not at all. Like you said, and there's probably, you're not the only one that only was educated on Harriet Tubman and Abraham Lincoln, and there's so many other strong Black pioneers that has made a detrimental mark to us in society.
I recently read a story that I found really interesting. A young Black man was dating a white boy. This is gay stories. And the white boy broke up with the Black boy and started dating a white boy. And I'm going to give you all the scenarios up first. Then a Black boy dated a white boy and broke up with the white boy. And there was a mixed race boy dating a white boy. And basically what it came down to was, and there was also a Black boy dating a Black boy. And so what was happening was they were talking about how people perceived these people. And on the very end of it, it was a white man who only dated white men. And the white man that only dated white men was considered a racist, but the Black men that only dated Black men were not. And then everybody in between, the white guy that dated the Black guy and broke up with him was subsequently a racist, but the mixed race boy who broke up with the white person was not. And so we have all this really crazy perception of what racism is. And what this article was basically saying was that that Black people aren't considered racist.
I disagree. I think all people should be considered racist.
And when I got to the end of it, I was like, what the hell? And
yeah,
I mean, and so I didn't really understand what the whole point of it was. And so do you think that there is, do you think that racism has changed?
I do think that racism has changed.
Because, 25 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, maybe even less, that article probably wouldn't even been written.
True.
There wouldn't have been enough data
Right.
on really even gays
Right.
and the way they couple and the way they react to breakups and the way they react to and I have to tell you this. The white guy that was interviewed for this that said that he only dated white guys says that he didn't decide that his cock did.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, Well, that's what he was attracted to, obviously.
And so and he was and in this little article it said, I'm not a racist. Maybe you could call my cock a racist because I don't make the decision, my cock does. And I thought that was really kind of crazy.
I think that would probably fall more to a matter of preference versus race. So, I mean, he just prefers one more, or his cock prefers one more than the other.
Do you experience racism?
I do. Racism comes in all different forms now. There is what's considered a modern day racism. It's not the in your face or, call you names or spit in your face type of racism. And racism can happen even in my own race. It's not something that occurs, just because you're white or just because you're Latino or whatever. It can happen just period. It's just something that's taught, and it's something that is passed down, unfortunately. So, yeah, I see it all the time. You have just as many African American families that despise Caucasians as you do, Latinos, and vice versa. So, I think we're just at a point now where this newer generation, my generation, we're kind of tired of it. And we're at a point now to where you see more mixed couples, you see more, interracial couples happening nowadays, and it's accepted more. And that's because all those people who were, really bigots and really against it, they're kind of dying out, unfortunately. It's kind of sad to say.
It's not unfortunate.
Well, it's true. They're old now.
It's not unfortunate. I think that's fortunate.
A lot of them are old now, and so they're slowly starting to pass, and some of those same old morals and values that they passed on to their children are dying with them. And, we can appreciate that.
But we still have people like Rick Perry, and we still have people who I consider still to be young. Rick Santorum, who is young, and we still have those people that are coming up who believe in superior races and who believe that if you're not Christian, you are not of the chosen people. So, I mean, it still exists.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely still exists. Where I'm from in Mississippi, just recently, they just signed the proclamation to even abolish slavery. So, it definitely still exists. And the governor at the time, and this was something that was put into place back in 1995.
95, yeah.
And it didn't even get, signed until 2009.
Well, they didn't know it had to be ratified. And then in 2009, some sort of technicality happened, and then finally, it is into law. But that seems a little odd. 150 years. Do you think that they were really secretly waiting?
I don't think that they were secretly.
Because Mississippi. Thank God for Mississippi. That's what Alabama says.
Yes.
Because Mississippi really is like the armpit of the world.
It is. I graduated high school in 1998. My senior year of high school, we still had 2 separate proms. And that was in 1998, believe it or not, in Mississippi. We had a white prom and a black prom, and we had a white homecoming dance and a black homecoming dance. Now, were they called the white homecoming prom or the black no, but it was, specific children of a race.
Did any of them mix?
Never.
Never. They still didn't mix because in 1984 there was a talk of breaking it in Opelika High School in Opelika, Alabama, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, it was a bad thing,
Divisiveness is wrong.
Mm-hmm. And eventually, it got to a point to where you see people, the kids started kind of mingling with each other, but I was the
in 1998.
In 1998, you still
started mingling.
The lunchroom was still separated. You still had all the black kids on one side of the lunchroom and all the white kids on the other side of the lunchroom. And if you were mixed or Latino or any other race, you just had to fit it in wherever you could. Literally.
That's crazy to me.
It is very crazy. But, and I grew up in a small town in Mississippi,
Did you experience any of the Klan?
I did once, my sophomore year of high school, believe it or not, the Ku Klux Klan decided to have a march through the middle of downtown Summit, which is right there where my grandparents live, where I was kind of raised up. And so they decided that they were going to have a march. And so here they go with all their, attire and everything. And then here goes all the, that was my first time, my first real touch with reality of racism. Because then you had all of the black civil rights leaders in the community. They all wanted to form and get together and protest the Klan marching down the, main street of Summit. And, that's not what we're about anymore. And then you had the Klan over here saying, well, it's our civil right to do what we want. And so it was crazy for me, for a little while. But because I didn't really know how to identify, because I had white friends that I liked and I wanted to hang out with, and I wanted to go to their houses and be cool with them. And, but then at the same time, then I had black friends that told me I was trying to be white or I wasn't black enough for them. And, so it was very difficult to kind of find that common ground, just to say, hey, I just want to be friends with whoever I want to be friends with, and just keep it moving. But yeah, I did. That was my first brush, and it was definitely a horrifying experience. And we didn't do anything. My parents just took me. We didn't get involved in the protest or anything. But what my parents did was they took us down to where the Klan was going to march, and they just kind of parked like a parade, and we just sat outside and we watched. And we just sat in the cars, and I just watched them, and they, they paraded through town, and they had their Confederate flags, and, they had the whole hood and mask and everything on. And, it made me very nervous, but at the same time, it was a definitely shock, and it threw me into reality to know exactly what, what life was really about.
Did that scare you?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so, yes.
In the summer of 1984, I was dating a young man from Opelika, Alabama. He was a couple of years older than I was, and he told me that we were going to go to a barbecue. And it was in the International Paperlands, and it was on a Friday night, and it was, late, like 9, 10 o'clock. And I thought, why would we be going to North Carolina? She's from North Carolina. Her first name is Sybil. I just want to know her last name. I can't remember it. And he said that we were going to go to a barbecue at that night, and we pull up in this great big truck. Now, I want to point out, I'm dating this boy. And we pulled up, and there was this great big fire going, and and it wasn't a cross. It was just this great big bonfire, and there were people everywhere. And in the distance, I did see, like, Klanmen, and I almost wet my pants because I didn't know why I was there. I thought, oh my God. I really thought I was the one that was going to be lynched, kill the queer.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, this is all my family. It's going to be fine. And I was like, I'm wearing Daisy Dukes. I mean, I was like, I was dressed like a queer. And that's right, I was thinking Davis. And I freaked out. I really, really freaked out. And they had like a little Klan rally. And I was sitting at this picnic table, and it was like a makeshift picnic table. And with all of these rednecks and wives and children running around. And I went to a Klan rally. And the entire time, I didn't want to get up because, remember, this is 1984, Flashdance had just happened.
Right.
And I was wearing a pair of cutoffs in the middle of the summer. And I was wearing the across the little sweatshirt, and was sort of a midriff. And I had a red wife beater underneath it, so you could see the strap right here on this side. And of course it hung.
You had a little hey girl, hey going.
Oh, I had hey lady, hey. And was the gayest thing, I think, probably in 20 miles.
Oh, okay.
At the Ku Klux Klan rally.
Wow.
That was the last time I saw him. I was scared to death the entire time.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Sybil Jones from North Carolina? She's kind of she was the wife spokeslady for the Ku Klux Klan, and she really kind of gave them all of their little one-liners that they would have on bumper stickers. Do you remember any of these bumper
I
stickers?
don't remember the bumper stickers.
The most famous one is called "Be a Man, Join the Klan."
Oh, wow.
Do you remember that?
I have heard the slogan.
Well, she sort of coined it because what she was doing was the Klan was really a rigorous schedule. There was always meetings, and there were always things to get done, and and I think they required money, and there was all this time and effort.
Yeah, I mean, it's considered actually it was one of a very big business.
Yeah.
A very big organization.
Yeah.
That, financially they did exceptionally well, and it was well ran, for an establishment. And I did do a little research on that from the business standpoint of how they operated and everything. And it was put together very well, which is why it's been able to be so successful for so long.
Well, Sybil talked at a lot of rallies to the women to get behind your man. Don't be worried that he's going to be spending all this time and effort doing all of this other stuff. We know that he needs to be the father to your children, and he needs to come home, but this is important. And I find that really interesting, that even, in the 60s, that, that a woman had such a large and huge impact on the Klan.
Well, that technically, when you go back to slavery, the slave master would be able, his primary target was the woman initially, because she could begin to teach her children to behave. If I teach my children to follow the slave master and do what he says do, then when this grown boy grows up and becomes a man, he's not going to be resistant, because I put this fear in him, because the mother is afraid if he doesn't obey the slave master, then he's going to get beat, or something bad is going to happen to him. So let me teach my child now to listen and to follow these rules and to stay in within the guidelines, so my child will be safe. That's just naturally motherly instincts. And the same thing with the Klan. If I reach the women, then they're going to teach their children the same things, and it's going to continue to be passed down and passed down. That's how we end up with this generational curse. Unfortunately, slavery, and it was horrible on both aspects. It was horrible for the white family, and it's been horrible for the black family. It just wasn't positive for us as a nation all the way around. And, how it affected the white families in a negative way goes very untalked about. It's very rarely that it's discussed or talked about. So you only get the one side, kind of. You only get the negative that you hear from the African Americans. We were beat and how we were treated, and all of this stuff, but you don't really get from the other side, the other perspective of it. And
what is the other side?
The other side, I mean, if you look at it, being a business owner, I have all this land, I have all this property, I have all these things, and I have to keep this stuff up. I need the upkeep. It's the upkeep for me to maintain the lifestyle that I want to have, So when you take away slavery, you take away my health, you take away, my labor, you take away my way of living, you take away what I'm accustomed to. So it's definitely a change, and it's something that's different. As well as, now I have friends whose families participated in, whose grandparents still have that same closed-minded mentality, and they're embarrassed by it. They're embarrassed. They don't want to, I don't want to bring you over because my grandmother may not know how to talk to you, or and it's kind of sad. But those families are also affected as well, and it just kind of goes unlooked at, because it's like, oh well, you guys had the best of everything, so you're okay. But at the same time, there's still generational curses that are still being passed down.
And there's a lot of people like me, whose heritage hasn't even been in this country for 100 years. Mm-hmm. And, so I feel really disconnected from it. Mm-hmm. And then moving into Alabama when I was, not quite 11, I had never really had any interaction with black people at all.
Exactly.
And my first day at public school in Alabama, the very first person that spoke to me was George Pinkard, and I didn't know what he was saying to me. No. He asked me what my name was. No. What's your name? And I had no idea what the hell he was saying. I was like, oh my God, no! And so Rowena Presley turned around and said, well, he's asking you what your name is, and she was also black. And he said, well, boy, will you stay? And I said, well, I'll stay right here. I will not move. I'll just stay right here. But and so there was just this. I was very disconnected. I had no heritage in Alabama. I had no heritage really from an American point of view. And in Connecticut, we were really separated by what our nationalities were. And in Alabama, we were separated by race. And I was white and you were black, and that was it. And we are American.
Yeah.
And people didn't know
No.
if they were whatever.
No.
A lot of them knew that they had some sort of Indian background.
Right.
But there was no talk about nationality. None at all. And my mother was 100% German, and my grandmother was 100% Polish, and so there was sort of a, I'm not going to call it a dedication, but there really was an education of what my heritage was as being a Polish American, as being a German American. My grandfather was 100% Irish, so there was a nationality talk in my home, and when we moved to Alabama, that talk really kind of ceased.
Yeah.
One of the first things that happened to me in Alabama was, well, not me, it was my mother actually. One of the neighbors came over with a plate of cookies, and the first thing that she said to my mother was, "We could have won if we had y'all's resources." This is 1977, 1976. And my mother was like, "Won what?" And she said, "The Wawa."
Wow.
And my mother, "The Wawa? The hell is a Wawa?" So not only did we have a disconnect of really what we were, but we had a disconnect of the language, not only for even white people, but for black people as well. And so today, do you experience more, we're going to call it, we'll call it trouble, as being a black woman, a lesbian? Where do you think that you are most targeted?
All of the above.
All of the above? Do you think that it all kind of all works against you?
Yes and no. It'll work against me if I allow it to work against me. But the fact that I know that it exists and I know what it is, so once you're aware of that, then you're able to take that and use it as your strength. You're able to take that and say, okay, I know that I'm a minority, and I know that in certain situations, minorities are needed. I know that, so where's my need? Where do I fit? And it's all about your purpose. I think that's for everybody. Once you're operating in your purpose and who you are, it doesn't matter your race or, your gender or who you sleep with. If you're operating in the right purpose, then everything is going to fall into line anyway. And there's nothing that can stop you from being able to receive whatever it is that you're supposed to receive and get, because what's for you is for you.
Do you feel like a triple minority? Black woman, lesbian?
I do, definitely. If I was a feminine dressing woman, then I wouldn't say so as much, because you couldn't put a stamp directly on my lesbian. But because I'm not a feminine dressing woman, you can pretty much tell when I walk in the room that I like women. So that automatically kind of, for some people, may shun them away from me, or may cause them to make, a different decision in whatever it is that I'm trying to do or trying to get or succeed at. So, but I also take that as, it's strength. And, with every no, it's strength in it and it's growth.
Are you aware of what's going on between Perez Hilton and Azalea Banks?
I am not.
You're not? Well,
I don't know.
Well, let's talk about it.
Tell me what's going on with Perez.
Okay, well, what it has basically started is Perez and Azalea Banks are basically feuding. They're calling each other really kind of horrible things. Mm-hmm. And Azalea Banks is really referred to um,
Perez.
Mr. Perez Hilton as a messy faggot. Um, he has called her a bitch. Um, and, you know, she says, what a messy faggot you are. And so here we've got a lot of words. And recently in the New York Times there was an article about the word bitch. And the word is being banned in a lot of and Madison Avenue type corporations in New York City because of the influx of black women and gay men in the workforce referring to each other, well, bitch, and bitch this, bitch that, oh no, bitch.
Time of endearment.
And so the word is kind of got all this double meaning. But then you've got a lot of people who are still in the workforce that are offended by the word bitch, and so the word bitch cannot be used anymore. In you know, in certain scenes of life. One, the workplace. And so, you know, we were talking about that, and it's in our world, especially the gay world, if we remove the word bitch, we wouldn't call each other anything anymore. It would be just like, well, we wouldn't be able to talk to each other. And at that point, when we were talking, someone walked in the back door, and as we were talking, and they said, "Hey, bitches," and it was really
Funny.
it was really funny. And so, all of this stuff that's going on between the two of them, is it communication? Is it wrong communication?
I definitely think I agree that it is wrong communication. I was raised that if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And calling someone anything derogatory out of name, you know, that they disapprove of or they don't like, then you know when you're saying some of the things that you're saying, what the intent is behind it when you're saying it. Same thing with the word bitch. You know, it can be used as a term of endearment, but also if I know that I'm trying to use it negative, it's about the tone that I use, it's about the body language that I use, the facial expressions, for you to know that I'm giving it to you in a derogatory way, and that is not endearing. It's not. I'm not trying to enlighten you, or you know, I'm not trying to do that. I'm definitely calling you a bitch because that's what you are at the time. So I don't think that it's definitely not. It's not right to call anybody, you know, these type of words and I'm reading this stuff that she said back and forth to him. It's horrible. No, they should not be speaking to each other, first of all, via the internet.
And people don't understand that. I don't.
Yeah, because for me, you're still a representation of everyone and everything around you, and everything that you touch is going to be associated by what comes out of your mouth. And unfortunately, no, you didn't verbally say this, but writing it is just like saying it.
Well, Azalea Banks describes herself as bisexual. So her calling Perez what she called him, does that make her homophobic?
No, it doesn't make her homophobic. It just to me is just a form of ignorance.
Is Perez a sexist?
Once again, I think I would have to say the same. I think it's just a form of ignorance on both parties' part, and it really just seems like they just need to have some open communication with maybe a mediator, and work it out. Like, it's very childish from some of the comments that they're making back and forth to each other, and there's so much other stuff positive that we could be talking about that's going on in the world that could use so much more attention than them calling each other bitches and faggots. So
yeah. Well, it appears that that Azalea Banks is being dropped from her record label as a result of her speaking out against Hilton. So, do you think that Perez Hilton has got any less viewers because of the way he talked to her?
I'm sure he probably will be affected by some of
You think?
I'm sure he probably would be just a little bit affected by some of his viewers. Especially like I said, because we're at a point now where I think a lot of people kind of feel like I do. We're just kind of tired of just, the media gives us so much BS, so much all the time, that is, sometimes you're just ready to, can I see real TV? Can I see real stuff that's happening versus all the reality stuff and all of the, like with Perez, with all of this, he has a platform that's huge that and initially when he started, he had a very strong voice in the community. And he was something that we could be proud of. He was something that we could say,
Was he?
to a certain extent. I mean, to say that
I thought a lot of his reporting was mean-spirited.
it was celebrity gossip. It was,
But drawing on the pictures and writing some of the things that he did, I thought was mean and mean-spirited. He has made a dedication to stop doing that.
Yeah.
I talked to him once in an interview about that, and I thought that he outed people, and really I think coming out really is
private matter.
is not for me to decide, for you to come out. Azalea Banks says that she wasn't insulting gay men in general. That, I quote, a faggot is not a homosexual man, she tweeted. A faggot is any male who acts like a female. There's a big difference. When I said acts like a female, I should have said acts like a C-U-N-T. I don't know. Are you a fan of Azalea Banks?
I am not.
I sort of am.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really know. What's going on with Harlem Shake?
Everybody's all over the. I don't understand why now the Harlem Shake is all over the place when Harlem Shake was something that was out like 5 years ago, I think.
Well, that's kind of like Vogue, though. You know, I mean, when Vogue hit the radio in 1990, it had already been a huge sensation in New York since the mid '80s.
The Harlem Shake has been so long ago that I'm just kind of like, huh? Where'd that come from? And it's sad that Harlem Shake is getting so much publicity right now, but the actual founder who created Harlem Shake, who was at Rucker Park in New York in Harlem playing basketball, he's not getting the credit that was due for this, and that's kind of sad.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of true for a lot of the I'm going to call them black street artists that really started Vogue.
Yeah, he was a homeless guy, and he would be at the basketball games, and that was he called it a drunken kind of shake dance, but it was supposed to be when you were intoxicated is when he did it. And he was considered a bum.
I do not understand it. I really don't. I don't understand it, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, it was something that he did. Like you said, it was something he created when he was drunk, and the kids kind of picked it up, and they were at Rucker Park at the basketball games, but now it's got this huge craze sensation. I think it's just because white people have finally caught on to it.
And
That's true.
twerking.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the kind of the same
It's
craziness?
Stuff that's been out forever, and it's stuff that has existed in urban
Can you
culture.
twerk?
I cannot dance at all. Not a lick of rhythm. I think when it comes to rhythm, I suck, and I'm Caucasian, I fit into that.
I know a lot of Caucasians have got a lot of rhythm.
I do too, and they make me look horrible. So that's why I said I can't even fall into that stigma anymore that white people don't have rhythm, because I see them all the time, and I'm like, teach me. How do you get that? Wait a minute, that gene skipped me or something.
I can dance if I do it on my own. The minute you tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm over. I've got 17 feet and 2 arms and 2 arms that are not talking to each other, and eyeballs that
get
are
one half
awful.
of my body at one time. You may get the top part going. If I can get that going, don't ask to have the bottom moving at the same time. Vice versa. If you need the bottom moving, don't have the top moving, then we're good. I'm okay with that.
What do you think, I'm going to get back to Black History Month, what do you think are the greatest perils or challenges in the black community today?
Dropping what was taught to you in slavery. Creating new morals, creating new standards, new values. Just because your parents did it doesn't mean that it's okay for you to do it. For instance, and it's not just in the black community. It's like I said, slavery. I don't feel like slavery just affected the black community. I think we were all affected by slavery. Just something as simple as spanking our children. To me, that's something that was picked up from slavery. That's something when the slave got out of line, the slave master would spank the slave to make them get back in line and cooperate and behave. And that's the same thing now that parenting has taken on in white families and black families, and that's just something that has been passed down from slavery.
I think that spanking your children goes way back further than that. I don't think we spank our children anymore, but
In black communities, yeah.
I see it prevalent in the black community.
Yes.
You know, and I strongly support it. Strongly. I strongly support spanking your child.
I disagree with it. I believe in punishment and discipline, but I do not believe in physically putting your hands on a person that cannot defend themselves. To me, that's an adult being a bully, and I think that there's other ways that you can discipline your child and get the same results without having to create torture or, for lack of better words, knock the hell out of me. I mean, or knock the sense into me. Like, that's not going to get any different result. The only thing that I think that spanking does, because I was a child that was spanked, was create resentment, and it destroyed the relationship, the dynamic of the relationship that I could have had with my mother and my parents. And also keep in mind, most adults, unfortunately, are broken people. So when you're spanking your child, it's not everything about the child all the time. So when you have those other frustrations and those other issues, it comes when you're spanking your child. So, the child is innocent at the end of the day. They didn't ask to, come here or be here, and it just is what it is.
But I think sometimes they asked to be wrong, to be in a position where they were acting inappropriate.
Correct. I agree.
And I think that I had fear of doing things wrong. I had fear of getting a belt. I had fear of being punished. And so when I was in a position to make a choice of going down the wrong path or to going the right path, I would take the right path for fear that I was going to be punished for it if I got caught.
But now as an adult, can you say that does not create limitations in your life now? For fear that you're going to mess up, for fear that you're not.
No.
Did you not go back and look for approval or some sort of stamp of approval from your parents or?
See, I don't think mine was abusive.
Okay.
I think that when I got spanked because I earned it.
Okay.
And a lot of times I was very disrespectful with my mouth, and
I see that a lot in white families.
and in the mouth.
And when
in
I
your
say
mouth,
that, I mean,
your-
just
or-
white children seem to be a lot more verbal with their parents than I've noticed in African American families. I was in Walmart not that long ago, and the little white kid, the lady was pushing her kid in the buggy, and she was telling him that he couldn't get something, and he turned around and yelled at her, "Shut up, you're just stupid." I would have never said that to my mother. She would have knocked me in the middle of next week if I would have talked to my mother like that. And his mom was like, "Just being mean. You're just being so mean." And I was like, "Oh."
Well, I mean, I did stuff like that. I didn't do it in public, but or if I did, I would get it later.
See, our voice was silenced a lot, and that happens a lot in the black family. Your voice is silenced. You don't get to be as verbal. You don't get to speak how you feel. You don't get to say, "I disagree with that." There is no such thing as you having an opinion in black families a lot of times. Versus, I think you have options when you're raised in a different culture. And from my friends I know that I've spoken to that are different, races, they had options where their parents wanted to know, "What do you have to say about this? How do you feel about that?" Versus in the black community, it's kind of like, "I'm struggling to take care of you, and you don't get to say anything but just go to work or go to school, and that's it. You don't have an opinion. This is what we're eating tonight. If you don't want to eat, then don't eat." You know what I mean? So it was very.
Oh, I had that. If you don't like what I'm serving, you don't get to eat. You're going to go to bed hungry.
Yeah.
I just don't think that mine was abusive, but I think that when I did get spanked, I think I earned it. Mm-hmm. And really, I think it did teach me a little bit more of, doing things wrong, being bad, had consequences.
Yes.
And sometimes those consequences are a belt across your butt.
Okay.
And so there was, I think a general fear of that. Recently, I had a family member that went to jail, got caught doing something bad. And I was telling a friend of mine who was black, and she said, "Oh, you white people are so damn funny. going to jail in the black community is like a rite of passage. And I said, well, that's wrong. And this is recent.
Yeah.
So is going to jail a rite of passage for a young black man, a young black woman?
Well, statistics show that there are more 17-year-old black men in prison than there are in college right now. And
17-year-old men, there are more in prison than in
enrolled in
college. That's not good.
Yeah. And
Why?
For certain things, like for instance, growing up in Mississippi right now, currently, they're actually evaluating this. The state penitentiary in Mississippi, Parchman, holds 5,000 prisoners. Out of those 5,000 prisoners, 80% of the population is African American. 80%. So only African Americans in Mississippi are committing crimes. That's a huge amount of people to say for a population of 5,000.
I have to point out that was a question.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't a statement, it was a question.
So you can ask the question if you like. So are only the African Americans creating the crimes in Mississippi?
Well, apparently only the African Americans are being punished
Exactly.
or
Or being caught.
And so what are they being caught doing? And why are they? What are they going to prison for?
Most of it, believe it or not, is for the sale of narcotics. Most incarcerations are for the sale of narcotics.
And this is all in part to, correct me if you know the difference or if you know I'm wrong, the Roosevelt laws, where there were very stiff punishments for even first-time offenders of any kind of narcotic felony.
Yes.
I think they're called the Roosevelt laws. I'm not really sure. It was just that, a lot of first-time offenders, thank you, were sent to jail for 15 years.
Yes, this is correct.
And I know a lot of the people that were affected by that were African American.
Mm-hmm.
So why?
I think that's that part of racism that still exists to a certain extent. You still have, it's so much corruption that goes on in the police departments a lot of times. And if I'm, I get a job as a police officer and in the back of my mind, I'm a racist. You don't know that I'm a racist when you hire me as a cop. So I could target everybody that's African American because I just don't like African Americans.
Have you ever been driving through, we'll say, a predominantly white neighborhood and been pulled over for no reason?
Yes, I've experienced that several times. Believe it or not, just here in Dallas, BMW would not sell me a car when we first got here from New York because we were trying to purchase two. And they told me it was against the law to buy two cars at one time. BMW in Plano, believe it or not, sure did.
Is that a law?
No, it's not a law. It's a law. It's against the law to buy a car for someone else, but it's not against the law.
What do you mean it's against the law to buy a car for someone else?
Well, according to BMW, they said it was against the law to buy a car for someone else.
What do you mean? How is that against the law?
Meaning that
I can buy you a car if I want to.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can't I?
I thought that you could.
I think I can. I could buy you a banana. Why can't I buy you a BMW?
Car. I took my services elsewhere and got the same car, but a different establishment. So it does exist. It definitely exists, for sure. And what I was told at the time was, well, we need to be sure that you can afford these.
Well, I'm going to defend him for just a second. In order to buy a car, you do have to be able to afford it.
But this is after I've already gotten approved from BMW financing themselves. I already have the paperwork and the approval for whatever I want to get. But I have to go back and talk to your finance manager because he needs to be assured that I can afford the cars. Plano, Texas.
In Plano, Texas.
Plano, Texas.
So, is going to prison a rite of passage?
It's not a rite of passage. It should not be a rite of passage, but it is something that has become custom. It is something that you just kind of get used to. It's something that,
Well, my friend was like, "What are you so worried about?
yeah, it's
It's not that
something
big of a deal." And it's like, "Yeah, it is a big a deal.
yeah.
We're talking possible prison time." And she was like, "Well,
You probably know more. There's probably more African Americans that are familiar with the law and the laws and how they fall into the laws and
well, personally, I know more African Americans that have been to jail than I know white people
yeah, me
have
too.
been to jail.
Definitely. Me too.
And those are just my statistics.
It's true.
So how do we as a society help to change that?
It starts at home. It starts at home, and once again, I cannot stress enough, it starts with breaking generational curses. It starts with teaching your children that because your grandparents did it this way or your mom taught you this way, that doesn't mean it's okay to start new tradition. It's okay to have new morals. It's okay to create your own. It's okay to be different and step outside of what you know as your norm.
Well, don't you think in the last 30 years in particular that we'll call it the family unit, has really kind of eroded? And I'm not just talking black communities, I'm talking about in the white as well. And we were talking recently about children that are so entitled today, and the reasons why. I have a theory, and one of them is reality television, but the other is that for so long they've had possible two families because their original family got divorced, and then their mother and father then remarried and had other families, and so they were kind of working the system twice. And so if they didn't get it from mom, they got it from dad, and they normally got it from both because both kind of felt guilty that you're having to grow up in this real severed life,
Correct.
which only teaches you how to manipulate the system. And so if you've grown up in a manipulated system, you are going to want to work in a manipulated system and then create your own manipulating system. So that's my theory.
Yeah.
And so the family unit really is, I think, eroded to the point where,
Yeah, it's horrible.
there are no families anymore.
No, not at all. A lot of times kids don't, most kids don't even see their parents until maybe a couple of hours a day, if that. Maybe 2 or 3
Yeah.
at the most.
And that's in general. That's white children, black
yeah,
children,
that's in general.
Hispanic children.
Absolutely. Just a few hours in a day is what you normally spend with your parent. I can even remember when I was in high school. My mom worked all the time, so I didn't see her much. She was always working. So, when you get to a certain age, you kind of just pretty much do your own thing, and you kind of fall into that raising yourself, teaching yourself, having the streets teach you, and that's kind of what I did.
Why doesn't the Million Man March happen in February?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they don't do the Million Man March in February at all. It would be that's a good suggestion to do it in February. Actually, I mean, it makes sense to do it in February.
But do we have to cram everything in 1 month? I mean, we're only getting history for 1 month. Why, do you know much about the Million Man March?
I know a little bit about it. Of course, I'm not a man, so I haven't really did a lot of research into, but I do know what they stand for, and I do know that they, try to push black men into being role models and being those father figures that, so many African American males don't have, So I do know that that's kind of what they stand for. Positive.
Do you think it's gotten better in general?
I actually
Being a black person in America. Has Obama changed? Has Obama changed attitudes? Has it changed an attitude in the black community as well?
Yes and no. I can say that too about that. Yes and no. It has made a positive change and it has made a negative change. Obama made a positive change in the black community because it was inspiring, and it was a visual to what white America has been telling us all our lives, that you can accomplish anything and you can, kind of like living that American dream that's been painted to us all our lives throughout school. So to finally see someone of our race and our color achieve that, So then it definitely created some inspiration for younger children, I'm sure, to say, "Oh, I want to be president now." Before, to say you want to be president sounds so far fetched and so far out in space that it was unreal, like an unrealistic dream to have. So to now to actually see that as a reality, my thing is now I would love to see a woman. That would make it more realistic for me as a woman, to say, okay, now we have a female president. It goes. We have so much further to go as a nation, when it comes to just where everything is, with racism and just all the way around, from homosexuality, just acceptance in general. I think as a nation, we just have to get to a point where we can learn acceptance. And once we can get to that point, then we can grow. And until we get to that point, we're going to stay stagnant exactly where we are. And that's kind of what's happening as a nation. We can't build each other up because we're too busy tearing each other down. So if we can ever get to a point to where I can say, hey, let me help you out. I see you're a business owner. You need some help. I could use the help over here. Doesn't matter what you look like. It's just what you can produce and what you can do for me. And that's kind of what I think Obama is kind of standing for at this point. He's kind of saying, okay, we've learned from our mistakes. Let's kind of do something different. Let's quit doing the same things. And then you have some people that, they want to, why it is not broke, don't fix it. Why reinvent the wheel?
Well, he caused quite a stir when he first got elected by saying, pull up your pants and let's go to work.
Right.
And a lot of people were really mad about that, and a lot of African American people were really mad about that, saying that he was a sellout, and I was really surprised by that. I was really surprised by that, because really I do want these young kids to pull up their pants. I don't want to look at your boxer shorts. And this isn't black people anymore. It's everyone.
That's everyone.
There's 17-year-old boys out there that are holding up their pants with one hand, and their butts are hanging out on the other. With and I get it. I mean, I was young at one point. I did we were talking about the whole Flashdance thing. I was gayer than gay. So I understand fads. I've been surprised that the support for him, especially in the black community, is really kind of flip-flopped. You either are on or you're not. I've heard a lot of the same things being said about Condoleezza Rice. And something else that I've always questioned is, I don't really know how to say this, but if a person has a drop of blood in them, they're black. Why?
They're, most people are considered, of course, as you know, they're racist based off of whatever your father is at the end of the day. But, that's something that also goes back from slavery. You had so many
But if your father was white and your mother was black, why is the child black?
I wouldn't consider the child black. I still would consider the child white. To me, I would. I would. I mean, unless does the child look black? If you don't look black, then you're not black to me.
I knew a girl that was that considered herself black, but she really looked white.
Okay.
But she considers herself black because she had black in her family.
I actually have family members in my family. My great grandmother and my cousins. They have blonde hair and blue eyes. And I am blood related. That is my biological family, and that's the funny thing about, black culture, or I don't know what genetics, we can come out a rainbow, and that doesn't make you any different, but I think when they attach you to being black, it's just because you have that black blood. So yeah, unfortunately, that's just one of those things that's still carrying on. It's stupid to me. I don't think it should exist. I think I don't look at people for their color. I look at people for the personality and who they present themselves to me to be.
On the same day that I was reading about this whole study, about how men date, oh wow. I also read that in 200 years there would be no more blue eyes, and in 400 years there would be no more white people,
I could probably agree with that.
and that we are all going to one significant color, which would be sort of mocha.
Multiracial.
Hmm.
I could agree with that. I could see a lot of. I could see that. If you notice, there's so many more mixed race couples.
Yeah.
So many more mixed race couples than I've seen in my entire life now. And after moving to New York and being in the melting pot of so many people, 8 million people in New York, and the most of the couples that I saw, believe it or not, gay, straight, no matter who you were, they were. It was so many biracial couples,
Yeah.
mixed racial couples, and so that was very inviting for me to be in New York and to experience that, and and to see them be able to share their love freely, just even from a heterosexual standpoint. In so many places they couldn't go and be themselves. And I have family members who married outside of their race, and to me, those family members are their family.
Yeah.
It's no different.
If you could persuade anyone to research any significant point in history for the Black History Month, what would it be?
I would have to say the Renaissance age, the 1930s, when, and also probably the era too, right at the end of Jim Crow, when all of the black people were leaving the South and moving to the East, and Harlem was booming, and black businesses was booming, and you had so many entrepreneurs, and it was so inspiring, and that's when you had the creativity, and you had the that's when you had something to be proud of, to say that I'm black, and to say.
We also had a huge removal, where a lot of really talented black female artists moved to Europe to become famous.
You did.
And they later came back to America as stars.
Right.
And so that era really is.
During this era, that's what I was about to say. Nina Simone performed at Carnegie Hall. You had so many.
Eartha Kitt.
Eartha Kitt. It was so many African Americans that were able to come back and be able to say, "This is home, and I'm going to perform here, and you're gonna love me."
Yeah. And you're gonna love me.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Just Keep Breathing. My in-studio guest today, Renaissance gal, Amanda Robinson. Thank you for joining us for Black History Month. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We're here every Tuesday, every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. on RationalBroadcasting.com and Ustream. Thank you for tuning in.